And the camera wasn't on. Did I mention I was scatterbrained today? Whew. Scatterbrained. Okay, this is my Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray is going to go in the center of my palette. My blue is going to go, what I call, I guess, the top or my north. It's not my north, but the top of the page or the palette. And my magenta, running low on my magenta. I use a lot of magenta. I use a lot of magenta, violet, and purple. Those shades, aside from, I think, Deb's in the house. Deb's in the house, and I met my lovely little friend a long time ago. And she loves purple. So I do paint a lot with purple, but not because of my friend, but because I like to paint with purple and it's a good undertone. I have a purple pastel pencil and I have some white chalk. So with the purple pastel pencil is what I'm going to use to lay in my sketch. And as with the class prior, so I want to show you here that I'm about 1 inch in from my left-hand side. And I'm just right of center on my right-hand side of the vessel. And then the top lip, or this is actually the waterline, the top lip is way up here. The top lip of this one is just above my center point. So with that, I can either match it here if I'm going from my own reference. I can eyeball it, which is what I normally do, or you can measure. So here I'm just above my center. I'm about 1 inch. I'm going to draw a straight line down, and I'm just to the right of center for the vessel. And I know I'm going to have a water line somewhere in there, so that's my idea of the water line. Here's the top rim of the vessel. As in with the other piece, we have a star. A lot of people lay flowers in, draw flowers in, paint flowers in with circles. I like straight lines for mine. It helps me create more structure for me to really define the direction of the piece, of the flower. So here's my center. It's going to open up, meaning it's going to bloom more, get wider down here at the base. So I'm making these lines out a little wider. I have a little guy over here on my right, and where it's tight, these little squares, these little marks, that means center, and it helps your eye understand that that's a closed space, tight. As I come away from the center, my straight lines that are laid in kind of in squares and diagonals become more broad, wider, and then wider as in apart from each other. And then on my left, I have another lovely little guy that I'm going to do the same thing over here. So this guy's going to point in this direction. This one, we're going to go maybe to the right, just an opposing, just above center line here. This one's going to come in this direction, and this is coming over to my left. So they're all looking like little lookouts in different views. Then up here, I'm going to have another flower, so I'm just going to lay that mark in. In here too, I may have some flowers as well. So I'm going to set my purple pastel aside, and I want to caution you that as I go forward and with my paint, I will be painting over these marks. I lay these marks in as a guide for my eye and a muscle memory. I will try and recapture them as we go, but it's not necessary. The reason I utilize pastels or a water-soluble mark is to help. It used to be to help myself just come in and lay shape on. I wasn't comfortable with laying paint first on a canvas. So putting the chalk line helped kind of take that away for me. So I'm going to start with the darkest area. So here's my darkest section. I break my canvas into darkest, mid area, and lightest. So all of this area and under in here is what I'm going to call my dark area. This top section, and I'll take that dark area all the way over up here. So about 1/3 of the canvas. And this area here, we're going to call it my mid area, the middle range. And down here, I'm going to call this my light area. So for my darkest, I'm going to pull some of the Payne's Gray, have my larger brush of the two, the 10 millimeter. I'm going to pick up some of the Quinacridone or the Magenta and blend those two together, bring some of that together right here. And that allows me to mix that, utilize the Payne's Gray with both the Magenta on the right side or on my bottom side, your left side. I can't tell how you're looking. And then the blue up here gives me an area here to mix my blue. I'm going to come in and immediately add in some of that dark. And before I forget, let's mark in a table line. So I took to a diagonal line. I'm about 1.5 inches from the bottom left. And I'm just taking that line and at an angle up to my right side. The more of the Payne's Gray that's in here, the darker this will be. So as I come in here between the floral areas, I'm going to lend more heavily to the Payne's Gray. I'm catching up on your comments. Sorry that I disappeared off the screen, Deb. I see that you are not painting today, that you're watching. I appreciate you for being here. As I come up, it gets a little brighter, so I'll bring some of that magenta back in. I did say that this is the darkest area of the panel, but even with that, I'll vary that tone with the magenta because I can and because I like to vary my color. But here in the center, it will be the darkest of the dark. That's between the flowers. And the reason behind that is that's where my shadow line is going to be, and here on the left as well. Then here too at the top of the vessel would be dark because the flowers cast shadow. The foliage will cast shadow. So I'll make sure that it's darkest up here at the top. And before I forget that that line is there, I'll come in with some white chalk and put a white line in here. So I remember where the top of my vessel is and that that's a vase. And you'll see too that I clean my brush in the vase, and most of my line will be perpendicular straight up and down. So rather than wasting the paint on a towel, I clean the bristles of my brush predominantly in the vase. And what else? This is going to be a clear vase, so we'll see all the colors reflected here. And to achieve that, my style is any color that I place in the bouquet lands also in the vase. At the top, I'm going to say this over and over again, at the top will be the darkest. On my right side of this vase will be the lightest. To my left will be the darkest. So top and left dark, right and bottom is the lightest. So if you think your brush isn't clean enough, grab a rag and pull some of that paint out the best you can. Come over with the blue and the Payne's Gray and bring some of that blue in. I'm leaving a white mark here So I do have a flower that's up here at the top. I need some more Payne's Gray, so let me grab some. Really sorry that I had my camera off, but for the important part, it's not off, which is the painting. So here I kind of blend those two together, feather it in, so it becomes more a gradual shift in the color. And I'm trying to work this brush back and forth. I'm not worried about the direction of my brush. As I'm working it, I'm cleaning the bristles of the residual paint. And just for helping me to keep my brush clean in the long run, for cleaning it later with warm, hot, soapy water, by doing this, I'm keeping the bristles free, or the ferrule area relatively clear of acrylic paint, which helps prolong the brush. So I picked up some more Payne's Gray and some of that blue, and I'm going to tuck in here. The closest I am to these flowers is where the Payne's Gray is going to be that I'm laying in. It's darker, there's more shadows. I pull away from those flowers. That blue brightens and lightens. And I'm mindful that I'm putting on a very light layer of paint. And the mindfulness is about the class mainly, and that I'm trying to achieve as much coverage quickly with as little paint as possible so we can succeed. If I were doing this on my own, I wouldn't necessarily go as fast. I would still be going fast, but I would lay on as much paint as I thought necessary, and I wouldn't be restrained by time, so I could pause as much as I want to let each layer dry. We do want to let the layers dry, and you don't want to come in and pull a knife edge. The knife edge is the flat area that the most fine area of the brush. If you pull with the knife edge, you remove paint. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure we're laying the paint down with the full width of the brush. And even in that application, you could pull the paint off. So again, we're going very light with this paint. I'm coming back over here to my left, and I'm feathering that color in, so it's more of a gradual transition of color from this purple Payne's Gray Violet area into this Payne's Gray Blue. And that blue that I'm using is a Phthalo Blue. We have a Payne's Gray, Phthalo Blue, and a Quinacridone Magenta in the house. So as I come to the lighter area, I want to introduce my light blue. I'm going to grab some of it first. There is color in my brush, so I'm not concerned with mixing the blue per se. Right out of the gate, I want to come in and grab some and put it in first and mark my spots. Now I'll pick up some of the darker shade of blue, mix some of this here, and lay it down. I want to make sure that here where this section, this mid area of blue, and this is what we're considering the light section of the painting, where they come together, that we feather that in so that there's more of a gradual transition here as well, from a mid blue to the lighter. And if you keep fussing and playing with it, you could potentially shift the entire color up here. So you don't want to go at it too hard and be too dedicated to that. Just let it be some. Again, we're using very little paint. I'm picking up more of the light paint. I want a light brightness down here. If you're seeing that it's turning too gray because of all the different colors in your brush, go ahead and pull as much of that color out of your brush as possible. Pick up some of that light blue and lay it in. We will and we can come in and add some more brightness to this in a bit. But for right now, we're going to let that dry. What I am going to say is I'm almost through my little bit of blue here. I'm going to take that blue and outline my vessel. So again, we're marking the areas. So here on my right, it's the bright side. Here on my left is the darker area. At the top, even though we're bringing in a light color, it will stay muted and more dark here at the top. We will not be covering all the colors in their entirety. The idea is to be able to see some of that color. And this allows me, I'm cleaning that brush and with strokes that are perpendicular up and down, so I'm not wasting the paint. Then I can come back through and grab or clean my bristles with the towel here. Before I go away, we're laying in this table area. So to do so, I want to pick up, I had some blue in that Payne's gray. I want to pick up some of that some of the magenta. This is going to make a really dark, pretty shade of violet or purple. And I'm lending more to the bluish note, so it is darker in here, the Payne's gray. And I'm just going to scooch or scruff. Scooch is an old word I've used for a million years just to make people laugh when they are around me. I like to make people laugh. So if that's not purple enough for you, you can grab a little of the magenta. We're just going to lay in some line. So this darker area is to represent shadow. And then I'm just clearly identifying that line for the table. Before I go away, I want to pick up some of this light blue just because I want to start down here with a light color, pick up a little bit, and I want to start from the right and come left. You'll see that it's kind of a grayish periwinkle muted purple because of all the colors in the brush. I'm coming from the right to left to keep this dark shade. I'm also where I have my lines and I'm laying it in right to left. I'm being mindful of this diagonal line, whereas here with the background and this surface, I wasn't mindful. I didn't care about the brush strokes. I'm all over the place with my background. But here I want to make sure that I have clean lines. I'm going right to left and I'm keeping them in parallel with this diagonal. And I'm not using a lot of paint purposefully because of the length of the class. We're trying to achieve a very layered look with very little paint in a short period of time. If you're at home, feel free to stop, pause, and all that and come back to it, and you can use as much paint as you'd like. If you see that your colors are shifting dramatically, meaning that you're not achieving the color that you'd like, stop, let that layer dry, come back, and lay in another layer. So we're going to let that be for now. And with what residual paint is left here, I'm going to come in. And here I'll use the knife edge as well to put in some just straight random line as I'm cleaning my brush in that vessel. See, while I'm at it, I'll pick up some of that blue maybe and come in here and tap some blue in. Keeping the darker colors at the top because there would be more shadow from the foliage above. I do want to layer color. I'm not mixing the color. Some layers we'll see in the long run, some you won't. When we're sitting right on top of the painting, you really won't understand what you're achieving until you're finished or you step away from your painting and look at it from a distance. So now I'm going to pick up some of that Payne's Gray just a little bit, and I'm going to tap in with this blue, some random lines kind of down the center. In my center area, I know too, because we're all going to have stems, there will be some darkness, some shadow. So let's just go ahead and mark some random darkness here in the center area. I'll clean my bristles. Because I'd like to, I'm going to grab on the knife edge some of just the magenta. If you pick up any of the other colors, that's fine. But some magenta, and I want to draw some magenta lines down. These two will end up seeing some of them, some of the mark. Some of the mark will go away. You can see that the magenta is changing drastically as you lay this in. It becomes more purple because of the wet colors we've laid in here. I am laying it in with the knife edge. The extra line that you get gives the idea of texture, texture of the stems. So it's a really fast way of creating the illusion of that, and it builds in shadow at the same time. All right, so I'm going to step away from that. While I have a little bit of this Payne's Gray, I'm going to grab it and a little of that magenta. Let me just put some dollop out here. Back to the Payne's Gray and a little magenta. And here in the center, I'm going to make some marks. Those purple lines, I'm not concerned with hitting each purple line. The line is just the idea of the flower. You'll see that in the center, because we started there with the most saturated color of the Payne's Gray, the violet, it's the darkest. As I pull away and I'm dry brushing this across the canvas, it lightens and brightens, and that helps you to create a roadmap for building the flower up. So the dark areas that we're laying in now will be the dark colors. The light areas that you see will be the light colors that we lay in. It just really helps give you a visual roadmap. I like roadmaps. This flower, I'm going to do this one next, this one at the bottom, and I'm going to try and pick up, excuse me, more magenta than the Payne's Gray. And the reason is I just want a difference in the flowers. So it is darker here in the center, but at the same time, there's a little more magenta in here, so it will brighten as I pull those lines and mark those lines in. But what's wonderful about this is you immediately see to where your shadows. So this flower here is setting in the center, and it's casting a shadow on this one below it. So this dark area, even though we came over, and I'll do it drastically with the purple and magenta, it stays relatively dark. So that just helps you. Again, that's a roadmap. I'm going to clean some of that out, and I'm going to grab this time some of the blue, and I want a little lighter blue. And just a smidge, just a touch. So I have all blues. So I have the mid blue, which is the Phthalo blue, some of the Payne's Gray, and then I'm going to come in with a little bit of the light blue. I'm tapping down first the darkest colors, and then I'm going to come around and just mark, and whether you see it or not doesn't matter, but I will come in with a heavier layer so you can see it. If you needed to, you could draw in. So here you could take the chalk and draw in another flower if you wanted to do so, whereas I just came in and laid the paint down. So you could For instance, if this were painted over, I could come in with a white chalk and draw it in, and then use the chalk line as a paint by number, if you will. Like, so you create your lines and then you paint within the line, the boundary. And I'll do that for some of the eucalyptus. So here I'm going to go with that blue again. So some of the mid blue, some Payne's gray, and just a touch of the light blue. And because we're here on a white space, it will be white lighter than here at the top. I do want more punch. I want to visually see more of this than I would like to see at the top. So I'm purposefully making this brighter down here. But just like with the others, here at the top, it is darker because this shadow is being cast from this flower in this direction. So here at the top is darker. We will have leaves and things that we introduce so this stays dark. You can come in and bring any residual paint that you have into your vessel. So while I let that dry a bit, I want to, where did I put it? Make sure that I'm painting what, I'm replicating what we've talked about. And what I've recommended to people in previous classes is that on your phone or on a different separate device, you have a picture or an example of what we're painting to use as a reference. And that reference is not for you to paint ahead, because it's possible that in painting ahead, you'll muddy your canvas, but rather just to see in the long run the shape that I'm speaking of when I say eucalyptus, for instance, what shape that is I'm after and trying to draw. And then in the long run, what goal we're trying to achieve in this paint process. So the first eucalyptus I'm going to bring in, I'm going to show you with white chalk. It's just really an oval or a circle. You can always, I never take something and exit at my corners. I always come right or left or above or below. So I'm going to come over here to the left of this. I'm just drawing in some ovals. You can make something larger, but you can't make it smaller. So, and with a paintbrush, when you apply pressure, the bristles widen, so the paint area that you'll cover potentially will widen as well. So you want to be mindful of that when you're designing something, that you may start smaller if you're not as familiar with how much pressure to apply to your brush. So that eucalyptus area that we're going to put in. And then here I want to put in some little larger areas, and you can, I don't know, just really, it's a square, but rounded square perhaps. You know, it's just an odd shape. I don't want to say it's a circle, and I don't want to say it's an oval. I'll just say a square, but kind of rounded. And the difference is where it connects to the stem. Put some over here. There, I do that for peeps that want to that aren't comfortable with laying in the paint themselves. So that gives you an idea of where we're going. So to create the first layer of those, I am switching to my smaller brush, not the of the flats. I have two sizes. I have the 10 and the 4. So I'm picking up the 4, and before I do, I want to pull as much of that paint out of my bristles as possible. I'm not introducing it to water though. So I am picking up some of that magenta, and what I want to do is grab some of that blue. So magenta and the mid blue. It's a luscious purple, like luscious, and I'm going to err on the side of brightness because we already have a really dark shade of purple. So it's more of the magenta that's laying on this. So then you just fill in the chalk. One of the lovely things, that I like about playing with chalk and introducing it in as part of the design is that it introduces texture. So it just helps build an element of texture, and especially when we're using fluid paints that you may not achieve on its own. So there's those guys. I'm going to clean that brush out a bit. Set it down, and we're going to grab the your cadmium yellow. The yellow can really shift colors, so I just really want a little bit of it. And I will bring in a little white. So I really am not going to require a lot of white. I do need some glaze. And I'm probably going to come in here with this turquoise. So let's just bring it out. That turquoise is a powerful color in that it can brighten, but it can mute things as well. So knowing that, I'm keeping it away from my party bus over here, which is going to be my brights as far as that magenta goes mainly. These blues and greens, all these shades play nice up here. So I am mindful that if they touch each other, I'm not so concerned. If this yellow gets in the mix of this purple where this magenta is played, it's really going to strongly shift that color. So I know that, so I'm going to be careful of that. What I do want to do is, again, clean this brush out quite a bit. Set it aside. I'm coming back to this larger brush because it only has the blues in it. I'm going to pick up just a touch of that yellow and quite a bit of the glaze and slap it in here at the midst where the light blue and the dark blue come together, and just play with that yellow a bit. And what you're going to see is I'm leaving the yellow a lot on top. Because it's a translucent color, you're going to see green, and that's okay. But if you start rubbing on that yellow, you're going to lose the brightness of the yellow, and it's all going to transition to green, and we don't want that, please. So again, some yellow, pick it up, brighten it up. You can even come in here where you've played up here at the top, slap some in, grab some glaze, be fearless. That's just how I roll in life. Bring that glaze and some of that yellow and touch in here. That just helps introduce the idea and just enough color to make a difference, believe it or not. If I were painting this for myself, I would go through a similar process, but I would be layering in more colors. This is just for this class. People are asking me about my personal process, and I am breaking down my personal process, but I'm really doing it with limited information. So the amount of paint and the amount of time that I'm putting in my other work is significantly different. But I will say that if you go through this process with more paint, with more patience and more layers, you will be able to achieve a similar result that I do. So I'm going to grab a little of the white. I am going to grab some glaze, more. And here I want to just touch in, especially on the right-hand side edge is where that white and the glaze is going to hit most. And the main reason is the glaze also is going to keep things moist and luscious so that we can play in that paint area more often. But if I introduce and bring too much of that glaze into the actual composition of the floral arrangement in the vase, then I'm not going to be able to layer as efficiently as I can. So the glaze here I want on the right right? This is where it's introducing light into the space, onto the vase, and we're keeping it bright here. But I want that glaze limited to this side over here. Can't emphasize that enough right now. I will say that you can bring some of that glaze and that color down here at the bottom. There is some yellow. There's some of my long hair on the painting. There is some of the yellow on the brush, so it can come in here and touch the canvas. I see Nicole is in the house. Welcome, Nicole. Long hair. So I have more glaze that I'm laying in on this table area, and it will glaze over some of that shadow. I can see the underlying shadow through this. A glaze is transparent. I'm going to pick up a little of this turquoise now, and here where that blue, light blue, and the dark blue came together, and where I still have some of that happy glaze, I'm just going to touch in some of that color here on the right-hand side, right? That's a lot of energy that it brings in. I know some people are not comfortable with my style. I get it. But I just challenge people to try something different. If you want to stay with very clean lines, very smooth lines, very transitional line, and not see the movement that I introduce, then go slower. Use very definitive stroke, and you'll have to wait until each layer dries, would be my suggestion. So you'll see our marks went away up here. I am going to come in and kind of reintroduce some of that eucalyptus mark, and we talked about it being maybe kind of a square with rounded edges. So there's my square, and I'm going to round those edges a bit. If something is at the base, it's larger on a plane, and as it goes away from me, I see less of it. So to make the eye see that and then give it distance and perspective, here at the base, these will be larger. As they go away, they'll get smaller. So with these, I'm going to paint them in, and I'm going to, let's say, just a little bit of the bright blue predominantly, and I'll stay with the magenta. I am using very light layers so that everything dries. We will be coming in and laying in additional layers, and for it to layer on top of one another well, and not just turn to mud, even though these are analogous colors, which means they're by each other on the color wheel, and I'll show you what I mean. I actually brought a color wheel to the party today. So believe it or not, that's the blue, and I did grab some of the magenta that's in here. Not as much. I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to clean the brush. Can we see this? Yes, we can see this. So on my color wheel, so the primary colors are your red, blue, and yellow. And most of the colors that we're playing with are all over here, which really means that they play nice, is what I'm saying. When something's opposing, which is the complementary color to it, they work well together. They complement each other very well. But when they're mixed together, they can really drastically change and just really shift a piece. So we will use complementary colors in this, or we'll create kind of an orangish color, which is an orangish pink we'll lay in, which is complementary to these. But if we play too much and mix, it will turn the whole thing into a brown note, and we don't want that. We want to stay in these pretty hues up here. And it's just safer when we're playing this with color this fast. So while I'm letting that dry some, I want to come down here and play in my vessel because I just want to be safe and let this dry quite a bit. So I picked up some of this light blue and I'm going to come back down in a perpendicular line, being straight up and down from the top to the bottom, and lay it in. I am laying it in with a knife edge so you can see that I have more of a narrow mark than the full width of the brush. Because this has been drying, it is not pulling the paint away. Now I just want to tap in some of this blue. It is just the light blue. I'm not having to mix any color because as it lays on top of the other colors, the layers of it themselves kind of marry with light and it darkens. As I come to the left, I do want it to stay darker, so I'm not going to put as much of this light over here. And if it ends up being completely light, I will purposefully make it darker. So there's some light marks. While I'm at it, I want to clean that brush. I want to pick up some of my turquoise. And with this being so wet, when I lay this turquoise on top of it, it can become quite gray. So if I see that, if I don't get the bright hue that I want, I'm going to stop and let it dry a little more before I come in and lay this down again. So I'm just going to see. So I'm laying it. See, I just touch. It's a feather touch. If I come in here and play, I can shift the note quite a bit. And it mutes. It turns more to a gray color. So here I'm just demonstrating what can happen. If you see this occurring, kind of stop. I want this bright light with this turquoise right now. I just want some marks of it. And here at the side, quite a bit. As I come left to this bottom corner of the vessel, you notice I kind of make a triangle. I'm splitting that vessel in half almost to bring that light down, because here at the top it's darker because of all the shadow that's over here. And remember that we laid in our color, our background first to show where the darks, the mids, and the lights are. So here on my left is the darkest. Here towards the top is my mid-range, and on my right-hand side to the bottom is the lighter range. It lightens. So that shows also in this vessel. So cleaning that. Well, I'm also playing in this vessel in order to let our this area dry more. So when we come in and lay in those flowers, it goes pretty quick. So too, I want to grab some of this magenta again. And we had placed some stems in here. So I want to touch, just drag some of this magenta in. And we will not see all of the stems in the whole length of them. These layers, as we create them, what it does is it gives the illusion of shadow that each of the stems would cast. And then water creates movement of shape and color. So it just really helps your eye and your brain to receive the information. And just based on the information it receives, it says, hey, that's a clear vase with cool color. I like it. Now that's me being sassy. Did want to say hello because I think Nicole may still be out there, and I didn't get to tell you hello earlier, Nicole. So hello, I just want to say hi, I love you. Okay, enough being silly. I like being silly. We're back to the ranch. So hey, I have this, go back to the smaller brush, the number 4. I'm going to pick up mainly some of this magenta. And I will touch just a little bit, just a teeny tiny bit of that Payne's gray. If it goes too dark, I'm going to stop and I'll clean the brush again. I really want more of a brightness. And again, this is going really fast. I want to achieve a quick result with little paint. So we're going to start here because it's brighter. And it's not giving me as much brightness as I want, so I'm going to stop, cleaning most of that off. I just want to pick up some bright magenta. And I'm laying with the knife edge, quick, straight lines. Think squares, think triangles. And where I had those other initial lines in that were kind of dark, I had white space left over. So I'm trying to really hit more of my white space. That creates the built-in highlights for me. I'm not completely shedding all of the white space, meaning I'm not completely achieving full coverage, because I expect to come in with another lighter color, another go round. So for now, I'm just letting this be. You'll see here where I lay this magenta on top of this dark shade, it stays relatively dark. That is awesome. We want that. The magenta is a translucent color. It's not opaque. I can see through it. So it picks up the color behind it, and we achieve, ouch, that darkness that we're after. So same colors, so the magenta and a little Payne's gray, just a little bit, maybe a little blue. Do I want a little blue? No, I don't want a little blue. Take that back, clean the brush out. No blue. Just want some of the magenta and a smidge of the Payne's gray. And I'm going to come in and hit the white space. If it gets too dark, I'll clean the brush. I am picking up more paint as I need to. I'm remembering that I'm keeping straight lines. I'm thinking squares, triangles. I'm following the map that we created in the beginning. If I keep that center dark, it'll allow me to create the idea, the illusion of depth of a center portal, if you will, that you can go into. It's okay if this shade touches these eucalyptus over here. Don't be afraid for that to happen. Don't be afraid to bring some of that lovely magenta down here, right across this dark color, because we will open these petals up in that direction. I'm cleaning that brush. I'm going to grab a little of that soft baby blue. And I'm going to grab a little white. And here, tap in. Squares, triangles, straight lines, not curves. That's why I'm not using a round brush. I'm using a flat. It just helps me. I have better success with a flat brush than I do a round brush. If you're able to achieve the same result or a similar result or a result you're happy with a round brush, by all means use a round brush. I see your comment, Deb. It says, I'm sorry, I have to go now. I want to paint these two pieces. I'll catch up with you soon. Love you. Love you too. Thank you for popping in, Deb. I appreciate you. So if you're just joining us, I've known Deb a long time, and we were strangers. We met randomly in an art supply aisle once upon a time, and she joined some of my classes, and we've been talking about art supplies and paint ever since. You are welcome to send me questions. She sends me questions. She sends me texts. She sends me all kinds of messaging about her work. You're welcome to do that as well. Okay. While I have this baby blue up here, I'm going to come in here and I just want to run some more line dabs over this turquoise, just a little bit, tapping in. Going to grab some of the Phthalo Green. And that green, I'm going to pick up a little bit of the magenta and some of that green. It gives kind of a purplish color. There's a real strong blue note to this green. Don't want too much purple. I'm going to lay it in on top of the eucalyptus that we had over here in the corner that we laid in with. The first color was, the background was a shade of purple and magenta. Then we came behind that and actually laid in another shade of purple and magenta to create an undertone for these guys. And now we're laying in a little green and magenta, and it's a darker green with a blue note on top of those to create the eucalyptus line. I'd like to do these as well. These, I think I'm going to shift them right out of the gate. I'll take some of this turquoise, a little of that green, more of the green than the turquoise. I just wanted to contrast, pop a little more. I am taking a little, just a touch of that magenta and putting in there. And I'll come over. Using the full flat edge of the brush, I'm setting the brush down here at where the eucalyptus nodule or leaf would connect with the stem. And from here, there's 3 pulls. So there's one, and I'm curving. So I'm setting the brush down and I'm curving it towards the center point. I can set the brush down, curve towards the center point, and then I can finish it with a 3rd pull. I'm mindful of how much paint I'm laying on here. I don't want a whole bunch of paint because it won't dry fast enough. So here, let me do that again. I'm laying setting the brush down and pulling towards my center. Setting the brush down, pulling towards my center. Setting the brush down, pulling towards my center. These are translucent colors, meaning I can see through them. You'll see that underbody. So setting the brush down, pulling, setting the brush down, pulling, setting the brush down, pulling. If you're not comfortable doing it upside down like I just did, turn your canvas around and do the same thing. And you'll notice that I'm not concerned if I don't have full coverage, if some of that undercolor bleeds through. I like that. That gives a little more reality to the piece for me, or to the eucalyptus. It gives the idea of veins and textures of those leaves that would be in the leaf in reality. Okay, we're going to let that dry. Since I'm upside down, well, not because I'm upside down, but I want to touch some of this green. I'll put it up here towards the top. And I said that all the color would end up in this vessel. So we are achieving that. I'm going to put some of this green note mainly here at the top, which show a lot of the reflection. That color leaves gives the idea of leaves and everything still left in the vase that hadn't been trimmed. We'll show some of that darkness down here just because there's shadow. I'm also cleaning off my brush when I do this. There, I'll clean my brush. Although we came in and we just laid some green in there, I'm not afraid of that green with this magenta. I just demonstrated that I can put a green in the magenta. That shade of green in particular, it creates a very pretty purple. What I'm going to do is create this eucalyptus. We're going to start the process of creating this eucalyptus. There's going to be at least 3 layers. With that, I'm very mindful of the noise in my chair. I probably should fix that. So those same shapes that we used at the top, we're going to lay in. I want this to curve, so I am taking some to the outer edge. I'm going to bring it around, and as I come more around, it gets a little smaller. So up here at the top, it's pretty large. And now with that magenta, I'm going to come in and lay that magenta right where those lines were. What's wonderful is that all that color that's underneath shifts that magenta all by its lonesome without having to mix a color. Because again, these are translucent, meaning you can see through them. So it picks up the color underneath, and through the wonderful science of light and all the things, it changes the color. Have I mentioned how much I love color? I love color. Lovely. While we're here, I do know that we're going to need some leaves in here. So with that same color, I'm just setting my knife edge down and twisting as I come in towards the edge or towards the center. Setting that knife edge down and twisting and coming in towards the center. Let's see, maybe I'll have one coming up. So I'm setting the knife edge down, coming up. I'm not even looking at the example. No two floral arrangements are the same. I'm just laying in some leaves because I want to right now, and I don't care if it's in the exact same place as the other piece. So here, I'm varying the size of the leaf just for variation and balance. I've brought the eucalyptus down to create a balance, so I have some at the top and the bottom. It just really creates a nice look for me. I like the curvature of it as well, so I like the curved line. Although I paint in straight lines often, I like to create curved lines from that, or the idea of curvature. So this magenta that we're laying in is just an underpainting for leaves, and like we did with this green, we'll come in with another layer. This is just telling my mind where we're going. So next, I'm going to grab some of that light pink. I'm going to move these guys out of my way. Just in case, I know I'm going to use some of that yellow. So I have the lightest pink, and I have this mid pink. And you'll notice that I asked for, or I mentioned a fluorescent pink. Little goes a long way. I won't use all that, or I don't believe I'll use all that right now. So I'm going to clean my brush out. I've been letting these flowers dry quite a bit. That's the reason to my madness right now. I want to pick up just some of that fluorescent pink on the knife edge. And here, let's see, I'll start down here. I just want to knife some random lines in, and I'm trying to hit most of the white space. If I hit any of the other color, I'm okay with that. This too is kind of translucent, so I will see through this. This pink, though, can really darken. You can really get more of an orangey brown note. So I don't want to scruff. I don't want to blend the color together. I am just wanting to lay this bright, hot, neon, fluorescent, I should say, pink on here. If you don't have fluorescent, a bright pink will work. Or you can wait more towards the end and create your highlights with just white. I really like fluorescence. I use fluorescence in all of my work. And metallics, and I paint over them, and it creates a really an luminescent look that I value for night viewing my work. I like candles, and the use, oops, I touched my green, I'm okay with that, so clean your brush. The use of the fluorescence and my night space, and I like candles, it just gives it a glow to the work that I enjoy. And in the daytime with the right light, it does a very similar thing. But I like the use of fluorescence and metallics. So we're not putting metallics in this one, but we did put in the fluorescent pink. So there's the fluorescence in that one. I'm not going, I will lay just a little fluorescent in, just a little bit on this blue. Just going to touch. It's really just kissing. And here I laid in with the knife edge first so you get a clean line. And then I just drew the whole bristle brush over because that's pretty dry. So it really gives a translucency that's nice. It shifted that blue wonderfully. So here, I'm going to be mindful that I see right here, I have very wet paint. So one, I want to just lift some of that wet paint for this. But because of that, I know that I can get an oops in there. So, but for the sake of the class, I'm just going to go for it. I'm tapping in. I will achieve, I'll see a purple show up in here when you're looking at it really close. That pink over the blue creates its own purple note. Do you want a little more? There we go. And there we go. And depending upon, I have a girlfriend which is why I actually use the fluorescent pink. Miss Jody loves hot pink. And when she sees my work with hot pink at this stage, she wants me to leave it like this because she really values the hot pink. I end up muting the fluorescent down with the other color. But if you value it, then by all means, leave the hot pink in. So I will put some of that hot pink over here on my left. I still am painting upside down. I want to bring some of that color in through here, not too much. Pink scares people. Used to scare me, doesn't scare me anymore for a lot of reasons. And we are painting fearlessly. That's what I'm about. Is I embrace fear through color in so many ways. So here I actually am using horizontal lines to pull some of that pink. And that actually creates the illusion of more water. And it kind of marries all that color together a little bit. And I still have white space that will end up covering up. What's great is to turn around, and by it being upside down, I'm not as fixated on the fact that those are flowers. I'm really just painting the shape upside down. And when I turn this around, I'm going to be probably pretty surprised. And usually I'm very surprised in a good way. So now I'm picking up a little bit of this light pink, which is almost a flesh tone, and that mid pink. And I want to just touch in. If I apply too much pressure where it's wet, I'm going to drastically change the color. So I'm aware of that, and I'm just barely tapping and moving, tap and move. Here in the center area, see how dark that is? I just barely want to create some really small line. I don't even need the detail brush to do that. I'm using the corner edge of my brush. If you're more comfortable with the detail brush, then by all means. I still haven't completely shed all the white space. We will. I'm going to do that same thing up here. Again, straight lines, squares, and triangles is what I like to think about when I'm laying these in. And this can be a rose, an idea of a rose. It could be an idea of a ranunculus. I have peonies in my house right now. God, I love peonies. I love flowers. Whew. I've never succeeded in growing peonies. I really wish to grow peonies. I really want up here, let's see. I'm just going to leave that alone for now. I do want some of that color too in here, so let's just bring some of that lightness down here. What's wonderful about painting upside down, it demonstrates that you can paint upside down. Because I know what I'm painting, the vessel and all that, I understand the shape, but this helps me to not be as rigid in my use of color. It helps me just to remember that this is the dark section, this is the light section, and it helps me to stay loose and fearless when I'm laying it in. Let's grab some of that blue, lay on the top. That's the light blue that's going over. Let me grab some more. That's this light blue that's going over that light pink, which is more of a flesh tone. It really mutes it and creates a periwinkle. It's more of a grade note. You know, I am painting with a lot of color and calling it a clear vessel. And you would not have necessarily this much color in reality. I just like to create color, so therefore we get color. It's just how I roll. So here I'm just tapping in a little heavier hand with this baby blue and covering over some of that color. And it allows the idea of shadow and just movement. And you see all the colors that are in there, just like you would in a vase per se. From a distance, you see color in a vase, but you can't necessarily make out what it actually is in the vessel. And two, the vessel and the color picks up all the other colors in the room. And don't be afraid if your color touches, just like I did, over the top of what we're calling eucalyptus, because that eucalyptus also casts a shadow into that vessel that you would see that color. So feel free, if it hits that color, that's okay. And I'm doing this purposefully to demonstrate that. We're still going to come on top and layer in another color or another round of color here. Let's see, I'm picking up some of my turquoise now, and I want to lay some of this turquoise down here on the left-hand side. It's my bright, or I'm calling it my right-hand side. I should turn it around since I'm talking about sides. Lovely. So this turquoise I'm laying here on my right-hand side. This right-hand side is the lightest and brightest. And as I come and I'm laying in more of this turquoise, let me grab some more. I'm remembering that part of this area is under shadow, so I'm keeping this light here just kind of down to this corner. I'm not getting too carried away with this lightness in here, although you still will have bright reflections. So I'm okay to kiss and touch in that center, but I really want these light spaces out here more to the broader line of color, bright color to the right. Okay, let that dry. Let's see. Let's pick up a little yellow, just a little touch of that yellow, and let's kiss on top of that. Right, just barely touching in. So that same brush. And I'm being mindful that I'm coming to this bottom left. By keeping that, and then I can just barely drag that color in a horizontal flick to my left. And that creates the idea of movement and water movement, and it pulls the eye. Just lends well. Okay, all of this is drying and has been drying. And what I'm going to do now, since it's right here in front of me, is I'm going to add some color to this eucalyptus that's right here. And the first color that I'm going to go with is just like we did up top. I'm going to add in this green. And this is the Phthalo Green. A little touch, just a touch of the turquoise, the green, and this time I am going to grab a little yellow. I'm getting a little magenta. So when I bring that magenta in here and the yellow to the party, it gives it more of a like an olive greenish color maybe. So here I'm going to lay that in. You do not have to cover and worry about covering the entire shape. And it's like where this purple, I don't have to sit here with the edge of my brush and cover the exact shape that I laid down in the first round of purple. I do not have to be this rigid. What I'm trying to get you to do is be less rigid and to understand that that first layer is literally the shadow for the eucalyptus. So when you have a shadow, it's rarely directly beneath something. There's always to the right or to the left. So if we understand that, we understand that it's okay for some of that shadow to show its little face. So I'm just randomly touching my little strokes. Here on the right, I will make sure that it's a little brighter right of this eucalyptus that I'm laying in, because there's more light that's hitting it, because it's more exposed to this right side. On the left side, it can be a little darker over there. Brilliant. So I'm going to move to this guy, back to the yellow. I'm going to go right here. So some more of that magenta. It takes very little. And let's bring some turquoise in. See how bright that is? I'm going to lay this here. It also creates like a muddied, because I'm not mixing it all. You see it's variegated. So I have different lines of color that's in here, which is just something I like to achieve. I'm going to turn this upside down. So all the colors, some yellow, some magenta, some of this phthalo green. I need some more turquoise. What did I do with it? There it is. While I'm here, I'm going to come in and just tap some line in with this brush. And that's going to be my stem. And here with the knife edge, I'm just going to tap in some marks to maybe identify some stem there. I'm going to clean this brush out, put some of that color in here on the bottom, and stay more to this area underneath the eucalyptus. That's where that more of that green would be. So where here at the bottom left, we tried to, or the bottom area was bright, here towards the this wall or this tight area, the dark space, I want the green to stay in this upper section. But I'm cleaning that brush, and let's go to the baby blue or the light blue. Here I'll pick up some of that turquoise, some of the baby blue, some of that yellow. Just a touch of the magenta, and you really don't need to necessarily add the magenta at this point because there's so much color in my bristles still. It's kind of there. And here I'm just going to touch and lay that in. That really brightens this piece up quickly. Like we did with the other, I'll use the knife edge to make some marks. Take it all the way to the top. Just barely touch in there, some line, give the idea of stem. Because this is brighter, where this is a little drier, I can just come in and make a little mark here and there. And that'll highlight it right out of the gate. We will not need to come back necessarily and touch this again then. And then I'll touch some of this bright note to that stem. That creates some of that highlight. These I'll let dry and we'll come in with another color real quick. Let's see here. What do I want? What do I want? Let's grab a little white. That's a lot of white. I'm cleaning my brush. Note, I'm not looking at the example. I'm staying in the same color scheme. Yes, we're making a pair. Yes, we're making an opposing view, but no two floral arrangements are the same. And because we're not concerned with matchy-matchy and painting an exact replica, I don't have to get caught in my head and tell myself that I'm doing something in the wrong, that I'm wrong. What I'm doing is I'm painting something similar from the opposing view that I would be happy to hang next to the other to make a pair, not an exact replication. So here with that lighter color, I'm just touching in. And this was a mixture of the baby blue, the turquoise, a little yellow, and quite a bit of white. And with it, on this side that's close, what I'm calling the light side, is where I'll keep it pretty light. Going to clean that brush off a little bit. Grab a little more of that. Let's see, I have some of that, the darker green, the phthalo green, some of the turquoise, get a little bit of that light note in there. And come over here on the right side. It's a little darker. Just gives a little tone. Remember, this area is under more shadow. That's why we're doing it like that. Maybe there's another one down here. Who knows? Okay, while I'm at it, with a little bit of that color and a little more white, I'm not going to mix, I'm just going to touch. Not going to mix, I'm just going to touch. I'm not going to mix, just touch, 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 touch. A little pressure that gives me a little white highlight real fast for the sake of class, or I can let it dry and then come back and highlight at the end. Here too, I want to touch just a little of this note in here. Using a smaller dynamic, just a little tap in here, and pulling some striation line really in the center and up and down. There would just be breaks in light because of the plants and everything in there. It's my thought behind it. And then just to give this a little highlight, white represents light to a lot of people, so we're going to create that idea with a few of this white highlights underneath. And we have not created the water line. We still will, I promise. So real fast, while I'm upside down over here, I picked up a little more of that white. And I'm just really getting a mint color. I just want to achieve the same thing. I want to tap in a little bit of white. Nothing big, nothing fancy. I just want to give a little highlight. One more round. I have these leaves. So while I'm here, I'm just playing with my different levels of green that are here. I want to pick up some of that magenta, So I'm just really playing in this color. And laying in with the knife edge. I am seeing that I don't have it contrasting, so I don't like that these two are so similar in color. So I will shift that here in a minute. And there's some of the darker blue, the mid-grade blue that we had earlier. And it's 4 o'clock. I'm giving myself really on the last phase. I'm letting those roses dry. I'm going to grab some of that blue and some of this yellow, and that's a darker green. I do want to capture maybe a little magenta in there. I'm just going to come in and hit real fast. And real fast up here. And real fast right over the top. And 2. About being fearless. And remember, if you don't like it, just stop and let it dry and then come in and add another layer, right? So rather than creating these really elongated flowers, I still may get one in that I did in the other piece. I'm really trying to give you more foliage and show you speed and just how to come in and touch things to create a contrast and lift the piece for yourself. And we need something here. We'll put that in, but I want to turn the piece around and do a round on the flowers. Ouch. Sorry about that. I dribbled some turquoise in there, so let's remember that. So if you want to, you can dribble some turquoise. There is some turquoise splatter on mine. There's some more magenta. I still have some of this pink and some of this yellow. I have both pinks. Here's some yellow. With the end of my brush, because I don't want to make a mess with my color, because my bristles are dirty, I'm bringing in some of this magenta and that yellow together, and that's a real pretty kind of orangey color. Orangey. And I'm just going to dot in to just liven it up. Who knows what kind of texture we could have in here. Berries. Just be fearless. Let's bring some down. Put some in the water because there's shadow, right? Anything that happens in that piece comes into this water. Maybe drag. See, now you're painting with the end of your paintbrush. That color is really great for stems. So now I'm back to the end, the knife edge. And I really want to just randomly touch in here some line, remembering where some of that magenta was. This is the last go around with these stems. Let that dry a little bit. We'll come in and put some water on top of that. I'm touching a little more magenta on here just to have them stand out just a little bit. For the sake of just design, I'm leaning more to the left with my stems and leaving it less over here on my right-hand side so I can see more of the water. That helps to keep it bright for me. Still keeping those roses, letting them dry. And I've cleaned out my bristles to the best of my ability. I want to come over here to some of that pink and that mid pink. Maybe grab some of that yellow. I'm mindful that I can really shift this to an ugly color. Grab some white. This is just going to mute. It's a peachy tone. And this part scares people because it really, if you've not let it dry enough, if you've been playing with it, you can really shift all the color into a blob. Blob is a great word. So I'm mindful, I'm just touching and setting that on there, but it really lifts it up. It pulls those flowers forward. Now, I don't want these to be the same. So for me, I'm going to come back to my hot pink. Cleaning that brush, I want some of that white, some of this hot pink, some of that magenta. It's going to be a little more purple. Here, I'm going to come over that green foliage just like that, just a little bit. I'm not afraid to touch other things. That pushes that greenery behind me. It's not all sterile then. And then I'll drag some of this in here, which shows that that flower is open. Letting that dry, we're going to touch it with one little highlight, maybe a little bit. We can touch in with some green. Just to touch in some highlight to harmonize. And lastly, let's bring in, oops, I said lastly, I lied. So I brought in some of those leaves real quick, and I'm going to touch some of this baby blue and that white up here, and I just want to kiss some highlight with the knife edge at that top, here too. And I'm walking my knife edge in the direction that I want, that I perceive the flower to be facing. And when we started, I said this flower was more in looking in this direction, this one in this direction, and this one kind of mid-grade. And I never defined the one at the top. So real fast, some white light. And this is really a mixture of the mint, the baby blue, the white. I was really impressed with some of the ladies. There was a couple women that chose to show their work with me, and two of them did it in real time. And I was so impressed. They really surprised me with what they came up with. So here I haven't even picked up the detail brush. So I've just been using the knife edge at the corner of the knife edge. So now I have some white on here, and I want to come in with some horizontal line right here and walk the dog across. And as I'm closer to this right side, it's a more narrow line. As I come away, I'm widening that line out. That tells the eye that there's a curve, and I can see this more. So that's what that does for me in a very, very quickly. And it did touch some of that brown orange that I put in there, so it muted that color, which is fine. You can also choose to drag that down some. And after flowers have been in a vase for a while, we get some ugliness in that vase. If we don't clean them, we certainly do. So that's what those lines kind of represent, aside from reflection. And you can come back over here and create another mark if you want, and really create the idea of three dimensions. And when I do that, then I come behind and soften that line with some more color by tapping in over that white line so that it's less rigid and less intentional. And then I can drag some of that color over those marks we called the stems. It mutes those. They're more obscured, which makes the brain think that it's in water. And back here, I'm just going to touch in little white marks. A couple more highlights. I have 4 minutes. Woohoo! I'm going to call her done almost. I did take this vessel all the way to the top, so let's very quickly drag a line down. My hand isn't very straight, but a booger. That shows that the glass is all the way up. I can come in and recapture my white line. Up here at the top, I can put a white space so it shows. And here I'm just scruffing in some gray. So that I can tell that that is all, like it's all connected. It's all purposeful. It's all the vase. And we're calling it a clear vase even though we've had color. Okay. So lastly, what I bad cat, I failed to do in the last class was introduce my splatter. So I do have a spray bottle that's here. I took the lid off. I'm not going to make a mess. I'm going to rinse my brush just a little bit of a damp brush, grab some magenta, and I'm splattering some of that magenta here. And I'll take it all the way up in here a little bit. And while I'm at it, I'm not opposed to some white, so let's grab a little white, which will turn a little pink. And be careful, because you can do too much. And if you want it to run, you can pick it up and play with it. If you don't want it to run, you don't have to. If it runs too much, you can come in and blot the blob and remove some of that water. But leave it flat and let the water dry, dab it off however you'd like. If you need to introduce more color, more shadow to this space down here, you can. You can just keep playing. So your roadmap is in. So I would let mine dry, try and walk away, and then I'll set it away from me and look at it and see where I need to add more color, where I may need to take something away. I won't go into taking things away, but if I want to layer more, I choose to layer more after it's dried at a certain point. And because I still see blank space, I have 1 more minute, and then I'm going to turn the camera back on so I can say goodbye. And I can tell that I added water to my brush. So I'm aware of that, meaning I can take color away. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is create something right here on top. I'm going to actually just change brushes because I'm really not confident right now with the water. And this is the larger brush that I came in and just added some of this bright color too. And maybe we want to drag some around, but you can just keep playing. And let's say I need some, I can just keep playing. Katie needs to stop. Talking to myself in third person. Okay, so we're going to call that done. I hope everybody enjoyed themselves. I appreciate you very, very, very much. Very, very, very much. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Nicole. I see your face. I want you to send me your piece, if you will. And you know what I'm talking about, why my light is off. So I'm pointing at what's going on up here. I hope you're laughing when I say that. Nicole is kind enough. She we trade favors. So she helps me with my hair, and I help her with her paint. And it's a marriage made in heaven that way. But thank you all. I appreciate you very much. Love and hugs to you. Bye-bye.